So today we're talking about a topic that I think all of you would be interested in. Who here wants to be happier? So that's everybody, right? I mean, everybody wants to be happier. And it seems like it's an inherent right. It's even written into our country's Declaration of Independence. So what does it even mean to be happy? It doesn't seem like a simple answer. And what makes you happy? What makes us all happy is a huge question. We say we want to be happy and spend a lot of time and energy and money trying to find it. And when we do, why does it always seem to be so elusive, so hard to hold? What actually leads to lasting happiness? Are some people just genetically happier? They just seem to be happy all the time? Or is it something that you cultivate, something that you work on? That's what we're going to find out today on Ask Dr. Nandi. I live and practice in Detroit, and I believe our city and the people that live here represent the best of America. I wanted to create a place that folks can go to that not only delivers health information, but also helps us share inspirational stories to help all of us grow, with real problems discussed in depth with real solutions. You are the most important person. You're the patient. This is Ask Dr. Nandi. Thank you for that wonderful applause and welcome to the show. On today's show, we'll explore the subject of happiness and learn some simple yet profound ways to cultivate more moments of happiness in our lives. We now have with us Dr. Rick Hanson. Please welcome him. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Dr. Hanson is very smart. He's a neuropsychologist, a senior fellow of the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley, and a New York Times bestselling author. So it's really our privilege to have him with us. His latest book is called Hardwiring Happiness, the New Brain Science of Contentment, Calm, and Confidence. So Dr. Hanson, we're talking about happiness, and one of the biggest questions there, how do you define happiness, and what is happiness?
Happiness is a basic underlying feeling of well-being based on feeling that your life is enjoyable and also fulfilling. So there's the enjoyment of watching your kid win a race or walk instead of crawling. And then there's the fulfillment of feeling like you're really helpful to other people. Both of those together are what lead to our happiness. And of course, happiness doesn't just feel good. It's good for us because it supports long-term physical health and longevity. It helps us recover from difficulties and be stronger for what we've got to be stronger for. And it inclines us increasingly to be good to other people. So happiness is sort of the ultimate medicine.
Now, we decided to do a bit of an experiment with the help of Dr. Hanson. We selected 3 people who wanted more happiness in their life and asked Dr. Hanson to spend 3 weeks teaching them how to cultivate happiness in their own life. Let's meet them.
My name is Devesha. I am a full-time student, and I want to be happier just so that I don't have to pretend to be happy anymore.
I'm Mary Carlton. I want to do this program because I've just been sad for too long over my mom's death.
My name is Melody Teodoro Curtis, and I want to be happy because I've been unemployed since 2009 until this year.
I mean, I feel like I'm going through water, thick water instead of just walking. Can I change this? If I can, I better, now.
My expectations for this journey is that I can finally take off the mask that I've had on for so long that I don't have to pretend to be happy anymore. My smile can actually be real.
I just expect bad things to happen. I know there's so much joy out there, I just have to open my heart to it.
I just don't want to live in fear anymore. I'm always fearful that if I fall on my face, I have to be so perfect in everything. I just want to be just human.
The thing I miss most about losing my mom is losing her love.
Because I'm about to graduate, that's like almost a big wake-up call for me, is that I'm about to start this new journey. I'm about to go and start these new adventures. I want to be happy, so it's very important to me that I don't leave college the same way that I came in.
I could be sitting on a gold mine, I wouldn't notice because I'm just kind of in a tunnel.
I grew up watching my mom wear this mask, and then it's almost as if I got that mask from her.
I just want to get to starting a journey and starting a regimen of just being normal.
We come back more with Dr. Hanson, and we'll delve into the journey these happiness seekers underwent. Please stay with us.
If you're going to plant flowers, as it were, rather than weeds in the garden of the mind, we've got a brain that's really fertile for weeds. If we want to help the flowers, the strengths, the happiness grow inside ourselves, we've got to help those little seeds take root. But again, 10, 20 seconds at a time. It's a very enjoyable practice, and you can feel from the inside out, as these three women did, who in my book were heroic in their willingness to try this stuff. You can really feel from the inside out that you're gradually growing the good inside yourself.
Back with you, we're talking about happiness. We're back with Dr. Rick Hanson, the author of Hardwiring Happiness, the new brain science of contentment, calm, and confidence. And so, we talked about before the break, what is happiness? And we talked about some of our efforts in trying to cultivate happiness. What about the brain? How is the brain involved in this?
Sure. Well, it's kind of amazing to realize that our experiences are constantly changing the brain for better or worse.
Right.
And we've got a brain that's like Velcro for the bad, but Teflon for the good. That's because as our ancestors evolved, they needed to survive by really assessing threats and always remembering, once burned, twice shy. And you can see it in your life today, right? Your boss gives you a performance review, tells you 20 things, 19 are good, one's room for improvement.
Remember the bad.
That's the one you remember. 10 things happen in a relationship with somebody, 9 are positive, 1's negative. What's the one you obsess about as you're going to sleep? And this creates a problem for the brain today, even though it was good for survival back in the day. It means that the brain is really good at learning from bad experiences, but bad at learning from good experiences, even though learning from good experiences, ordinary experiences of gratitude, compassion, accomplishment, beauty, joy, the love of others, and so forth, those experiences are the building blocks of growing the inner strengths inside. The resilience, the determination, the feeling of self-worth, the compassion for others, and the happiness altogether that we need to draw upon for the long and often hard road of life.
And what he's describing is a practice. This is not something that's like accidental, you just walk and boom, it'll come hit you. Right. It's a practice like everything else. If you want to, for example, if you're in a workout or fitness regimen, you do it several times a week or whenever. This is something, he's giving you a tool where you can do several times a day to build this up. So you spent the last 3 weeks with these individuals that were also, running on empty or close to empty. What's the process that you took them through? Can you explain that to us?
Sure. In a nutshell, we basically started looking for the good facts in their lives, and then opening to and giving themselves permission, actually, to have an authentic, appropriate, positive experience. A little bit of gratitude, a little bit of accomplishment, a little bit of feeling cared about by other people, a little bit of feeling like a good person inside, one of the last taboos, but a very important experience to have, to recognize that you're actually a good person deep down inside. And so then, on top of that, I taught them some methods based on the neuropsychology of learning, another fancy phrase, to really take in the good, is what I call it in plain English. Take in the good. So when you're having these good experiences, don't waste them on your brain, especially taking into account the fact that your brain is overlearning from those negative experiences. If you're going to plant flowers, as it were, rather than weeds in the garden of the mind, we've got a brain that's really fertile for weeds. If we want to help the flowers, the strengths, the happiness grow inside ourselves, we've got to help those little seeds take root. But again, 10, 20 seconds at a time. It's a very enjoyable practice. And you can feel from the inside out, as these three women did, who in my book were heroic in their willingness to try this stuff. You can really feel from the inside out that you're gradually growing the good inside yourself.
And then what about the negative experiences? Well, how do you deal with those? Because obviously all of us say, listen, I want to cultivate the good in me, but what about the negative stuff that happens?
Critically important question. So if we go negative on negative, what do we have? More negative.
Correct.
That doesn't really work.
Right.
So we have to be with the negative, ride out the storm. Fine. But meanwhile, it's really important to grow resources inside, strengths of various kinds, determination, capabilities, understanding yourself, understanding other people, compassion for others, kindness for others, compassion for yourself. And as we grow these resources inside, we're more able to deal with the negatives in life. It's interesting that the harder your life is, the more important it is to grow the good stuff inside yourself.
That's wonderfully put. Let's take a look at this video and see what happened.
The way to grow good things inside yourself is to have experiences of them. That you turn into neural structure so that you learn from them bit by bit, a little bit more each day. First, have a good experience, either because you notice one you're already having or you create one.
This is something easy I can do for myself to enjoy being alive, and it doesn't hurt anybody.
Decided to get out, get some air, go for a walk, and just enjoy nature.
I started to try to prolong that feeling of warmth and that the radiating thought of that peace and that stillness.
You can also kind of absorb this experience. Feel like a sponge, like you're a sponge and it's going into you. We're not denying poverty or death or issues or a bad economy. We're not denying injustice. We're also trying to recognize the good facts that are alongside them in the overall mosaic of life.
I imagine myself giving as much effort and time as I do to other people, to myself. And the way I felt it's almost indescribable. I felt so loved. I felt like I hugged myself.
Start to enjoy it. Enrich it by staying with it, letting it fill your body, protecting it for 10 or 20 seconds, giving it time to start sinking into your brain. Are you feeling also a little sad right now?
Yeah, that's okay. I mean,
yeah, it is. And I appreciate your courage in being willing to just feel your feelings and reveal them.
Now that I know how that feels and I spent time with that feeling, I feel like it was very beneficial to me.
Stay focused on the good facts and protect the experience of gratitude you were encouraging in yourself.
Practicing creating good experiences for myself.
You let the warmth of the fire sink into you.
After breaking down that wall and opening up about my father in the group call, I feel really good. I feel like I'm starting to take down a wall, like I said, that needs to be broken down.
I figured out that I can choose that, and I don't have to get carried away and make my whole reality be that thing that happened a couple of years ago.
It took me a while to get that negative coming. Like I was thinking about it, then I'm like, okay, no, I like my positive thought better.
It's so much easier now versus before we started this whole entire thing. It just feels so much easier.
It's up to us to grow the good things inside ourselves.
That was great. When we come back, we'll meet in person Melody, Devesha, Mary, our happiness seekers, and find out how they've discovered a way to become happier.
I know my mom wouldn't want me to be this sad, right? So
Right. She wants you to be happy.
this is a great gift.
We're back and we're talking about happiness. Now, happiness is something that humans, no matter where you go on the planet, we're seeking. But for a lot of us, happiness can be hard to find and then maintain. A Time magazine poll found that 25% of American women and 5% of men say that they're taking an antidepressant. A recent Harris poll found that just 33% of Americans consider themselves very happy. Is there anything we can do about that? And that's what we're talking about today. The new brain science around happiness and the ability we all have to cultivate it. I'm here in the studio with neuropsychologist and the author of Hardwiring Happiness, the new brain science of contentment, calm, and confidence, Dr. Rick Hanson. Also joining us are the three happiness seekers. Please welcome Melody, Devesha, and Mary. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you doing this. It's good to see you. So tell us about this whole experiment. First of all, why did you do it, and how was it for you? I'll just, any of you start.
Well, like I said, I am getting ready to graduate college, and it's a new journey. I want to start this new journey fresh. I've been wearing this happiness mask all my life, pretending to be happy, and after graduating college, I'm starting the rest of my life, and I don't want to continue with that mask on. So I felt like this was almost my last resort to do something that, you know, could help me beneficial. So I didn't know what to expect at first, but it was an amazing educational.
Are you glad you did it?
For me. I am so glad I did it.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. Melody, what do you think?
Wow. I needed a new perspective. I tried other different therapies, failed every time, couldn't stick to either one. I needed a swift kick in the, you know, because...
In the brain.
In the brain, exactly. And I needed to lift myself in order to get to a better state of being. And it was the lack of work, being unemployed for being so long, had totally affected all of my personal relationships, all of my perspective on life, just made me mope so much. I had the big cloud of doom over my head, and when this opportunity came up, I said, that's it, I'm taking this boat.
Good for you.
And
Good for you.
I need a change. I need a change. Thank you. And it was rough, and I did it for many reasons, especially for my husband. So thank you.
And did it help? Did it help with your husband?
I'm starting to reblossom, just like Dr. Hanson said with the garden. You know.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Good job.
Thank you.
And why did you do it? What made you do this experiment, and how did it go for you?
I lost my mother 2 years ago, and I wasn't really ready for it. It just kind of knocked me over, and it was hard to get back up from that. But I know my mom wouldn't want me to be this sad, right?
Right. She'd want you to be happy.
This is a great gift.
Well, has it been easier for you to cope with your mom's death now? Has it been easier for you?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I feel like it was the last straw before, and then this has kind of lifted me up. It's like the end of a process I've been going through for a couple years.
And Dr. Hanson said it's not overnight, but boy, in 3 weeks, you've all made some pretty dramatic changes, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And Dr. Hanson, can you maybe talk about these young ladies and what you've observed in the 3 weeks from when you started to now?
Well, the thing that really struck me was your willingness to make efforts to help yourself be better. And that was fantastic. You were those light bulbs who wanted to change. And it also really struck me how quickly you connected with each other. And I think that's an important factor for people to try to make things better for themselves. Yeah, you can do it on your own, but boy, does it help to have teamwork supporting you. And I thought that was great. And then the last thing I would say is that you both had a kind of, you all, three of you, had a kind of curiosity about your own minds. There was an openness, a receptivity that I thought was just fantastic. And there is a place for being a little bit like a child, interested in trying new things and exploring new things. And you all really had that. And so I was deeply touched by this process of working with you.
And we were deeply touched by your generosity. Dr. Hanson did this, you know, and he did it out of his own time and good heart. So really thank him for us. No, it's important because not very many people would do that. You know, two important concepts for me that I got from this is, number one, you all were at a place that you said, you know what, I'm really not happy with what's going on. Number two, you were the light bulb that wanted to be screwed on. You were willing to do it. And number three, the sense of commitment and also camaraderie is so important. I really truly believe that if you don't have a community, whether it be your family, whether it be close friends, it's very difficult to do this. It doesn't mean it's impossible, but it's very difficult to do. So I applaud all of you for taking that, and please give them a round of applause. Yeah. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we're talking with Dan Buettner, the author of the Blue Zone, Lessons for Living Longer from People Who've Lived the Longest. Stay with us.
About 80% of what helps you live your longest also explains happiness. So some of the things we see, these people are socializing face-to-face about 6 hours a day. And this is not Facebook. It's having conversations. It's doing happy hour. It's going over to each other's house.
Welcome back. We've been exploring the topic of happiness today. How do you define it, and how do you cultivate more happy moments? My next guest, Dan Buettner, is the author of The Blue Zones, Lessons for Living Longer from People Who've Lived the Longest. The Blue Zones is a concept used to identify a demographic or geographic area of the world where people live measurably longer lives. Now, Dan identified 5 regions of the world based on data and first-hand observation to explain why these populations live healthier and longer lives. Now, Dan is joining us via Skype. Dan, welcome.
Good to be here.
Oh,
I'm here to you.
this is a personal, personally, this is really an honor because the work that you've done, the book that you've written has changed our families' lives and people that are close to us, and hopefully we can share with our audience here at home and also the audience here that are joining us. Tell us a little bit about how you came. It's a fascinating story. How you came about learning about this Blue Zone. Maybe just kind of give the audience here at home a glimpse of that.
Yes. So I was on an assignment for National Geographic with demographers to go through birth records and death records and find little pockets just to find them. And then once we found them, we took different teams of scientists to go to each of those places. One in Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia, Italy, longest lived men in the world are there, Costa Rica, the Nicoya Peninsula, a little island in Greece called Icaria, and then the area around Loma Linda, California, where Americans live about 10 years longer, and then distill down exactly what are the common denominators that seem to explore longevity in all 5 of these areas.
Yeah, and so you found these areas and you found out that these folks, and here's the key to it, for those of you watching, it's not just that they lived longer, they lived more meaningful and happy lives. And so maybe you can explain to us, what are these folks doing that maybe the rest of us are not doing to not only optimize their longevity, but really optimize their happiness and the quality of their lives?
So it turns out that about 80% of what makes you live longer, and the value proposition really is about 12 extra years. The average American could live an extra 12 years. But about 80% of what helps you live your longest also explains happiness. So some of the things we see, these people are socializing face-to-face about 6 hours a day. And this is not Facebook. It's having conversations. It's doing happy hour. It's going over to each other's houses. They eat mostly a plant-based diet. If I were to say the optimal amount of meat to eat in a month, it's about 5 times. And if you look at every Blue Zone diet around the world, they're eating about a half a cup of beans every single day, and they're snacking on nuts.
And so, one of the key things that Dan just mentioned is that, we're always looking down at our little electronic devices. He said, face-to-face social interactions, and people here know as well, if you're always on the phone, people think that that's enough, but it really isn't. Or if you're doing Facebook. Face-to-face interactions, he talked about a plant-based diet. Also, eating till you're about 80% full. We in this country are supersizing everything, right, Dan? I mean, in the U.S., everything is supersized, where in these regions of the world, 80% satiety, so you eat until you're 80% full. And the important thing he said was also that longevity also leads to more happiness. And the one key thing is that they're not just living longer, they're living meaningful lives. They're not in bed all day and living because they're alive. They're really living meaningful lives. Wouldn't you say that, Dan? That's an important key to this.
So in every one of these Blue Zones, there's actually a vocabulary for purpose. In Okinawa, it's ikigai. In the Nicoya Peninsula of Costa Rica, it's plan de vida. But they're not just going through the motions of life. They know why they get up in the morning. They know what they love to do, what they're good at, and how they can contribute those gifts to others. And that's really important. Knowing your sense of purpose clearly is worth about 7 extra years of life, as opposed to just sort of meandering through life and phoning it in.
And would you also say, Dan, I know you get the extra 7 years of life, but when you have a purposeful life, it also makes you more contented and more and be a happier person. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. So as I said before, happier people live about 8 years longer than people who are depressed. In other words, the 20% of Americans who are happiest can expect to live about 8 more years than the 20% of Americans that are least happy. So you ask yourself, well, what can you actually do to get more happiness or more longevity? And this is going to be counterintuitive because we come from a society that thinks we can get it in a pill or a diet or an exercise program. But actually volunteering. Around the world, we know volunteers report higher levels of happiness. They weigh less. So you volunteer, you tend to lose weight, and you also have measurably lower healthcare costs. So it's one of these trifectas that you try it once, it tends to be addictive, and if you do it for a long time, it will pay off for decades to come.
That's great advice. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, more with Dan as we dig deeper into the secrets of happiness and living a longer and more meaningful life. Please stay with us. You know, in our society, we go to the gym, but we just go to the gym. And you know, we park as close as we can to the entrance of the gym so that we don't have to walk an extra 2 steps.
So the average American only burns about 100 calories a day engaged in exercise.
Welcome back. You know, when we left you, we were with Dan Buettner and talking about how happiness and health and what the meaningful lives and the secrets of people with meaningful lives. Now, Dan is a New York Times bestselling author, and he's joining us via Skype. Then when we left you, we talked about some of the secrets for longevity. The other concepts in your book were having relationships with your family. You know, more and more now, especially in a country like the U.S., people have even when they're together with their kids, they're not even having dinner with their families. I mean, you talked about in your book, the people that have the longevity and more meaningful, happier lives tend to have also a lot of investment in their family. Please talk about that.
Yeah. So if you want to see the life expectancy of your aging parent drop by 4 years, you put them in a retirement home. So you see these blue zones around the world. The grandma and grandpa is living with the family, and that, believe it or not, actually conveys a health benefit to children. Something called the grandmother effect has shown that children who live in a home with a grandparent actually live longer. Invest in your spouse. We know that married people live about 6 years longer than non-married people on the average. And it's really important to think about your immediate social network. And I would say this is arguably the most powerful thing you can do to add years to your life, is to really think about who those 5 friends are that you spend Tuesday nights with, that you spend weekends with. Because we now know that health behaviors are contagious. They're as contagious as catching a cold. So if your 3 best friends are obese, there's about 150% better chance that you'll be overweight. If your friends are unhappy, if they drink too much, that's contagious. So really curating that group of 5 good friends, invest in your family. 2 of the surest things you can do to add good years to your life.
And you know, it's the old saying that you are the company you keep, or you become like the company you keep. We try to teach our kids that. You know, we want them to be around people that are positive, and it holds true for adults as well. And then one other concept which is very, very important that I learned from your book was to move naturally. And we talk about, you know, in our society, we go to the gym, but we just go to the gym. And you know, we park as close as we can to the entrance of the gym so that we don't have to walk an extra 2 steps. Talk about, in those societies that have really done well, I love the fact you said move naturally. Talk about that and how we can apply that to our society.
Yeah, so the average American only burns about 100 calories a day engaged in exercise. And as a public health, as a means to get America fitter, it's been an enormous failure. There's no way you can sit in your office or in your chair all day long and then make up for it with a half hour at the gym. When you look at the lives of people who live in blue zones, they're moving every 20 minutes. Now, they're not killing themselves. They're not running marathons or pumping iron, but they're nudged into gentle movement. They're kneading their own bread. There's not a button to push for housework. They tend to have gardens. For recreation, they go out with friends and walk. And they live in places wherein if you want to go to the store or to a friend's house or to church, you're doing it on foot. So This movement is engineered into their lives. It keeps their metabolism higher. They burn more fat even when they're at rest than we would, trying to make up for it at the end of the day with a half hour in the gym.
Yeah, and we've talked about this in some of our shows with fitness. You know, you have to be able to incorporate small things in your life, and that'll make a big difference. Obviously, you know, if you're in a city and you have a job that you know, requires that you sit in a cubicle or in your office, you can't move all the time. But here's what you can do. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. You know, if you need to go to the grocery store, park farther away so you make that movement inherent, make that part of your lives. And what Dan is saying is that make all these an inherent part of your life. If we do that in the city, do you think, you know, we may not be able to get the same effect as somebody in a rural area that was studied, but do you think we can replicate some of these in our lives as well here in the city?
Well, if you're living in a city, you actually are statistically about 15% lighter than you would be if you live in the suburbs. Where you live drives so much of your health. If you live in a place where you're close to parks, where you can actually go to your neighbor's house and there's a sidewalk, where recreation is easy, it makes a huge difference. Your office, and in the Blue Zone's office about a year and a half ago, our whole team adopted stand-up desk. And we've probably heard about this before, but you burn about 300 extra calories a day if you're standing up most of the day. And that can almost completely make up for the excess food that the average American is eating. So just thinking about all the little ways we can engineer movement back into our lives can add up to be a significant amount.
Dan, thank you so much for taking time out today and talking to us. It's indeed a privilege. We hope to have you back. That was great. Let's take a quick break now, and when we come back, we have Dr. Rick Hanson. Stay tuned.
A lot of people, technology has a kind of effect that distances us from other people. Maybe we've got relationships that are a mile wide, but they're a quarter-inch deep.
That was a great conversation with Dan. Today we've been learning how to cultivate more happiness in our lives. A big part of most of our lives now, however, you know, rotates around technology. We're living in a digital age, and so Dr. Hanson, how does this affect this, you know, our view of happiness and how happy we are? Is it really adversely affected, or can we make it a good part of our lives?
It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
There is research that shows that for some people, including older people, that using technology gives them cognitive benefits. Although the question arises, would they get the same benefits from doing something else, like taking up a craft, like knitting, or going walking with friends more often? On the other hand, I think for a lot of people, technology has a kind of effect that distances us from other people. Maybe we've got relationships that are a mile wide, but they're a quarter-inch deep. Also, it makes us addicted to stimulation. The brain is trained by whatever experiences it has. So if you give this brain a really intense incoming stream of stimulation, it's a little bit like feeding children candy when they're young. Then they no longer notice that apples taste sweet. So I think of technology also as something that can make people feel kind of numb to. It's a little bit like bread and circuses. It's all too easy to just zone out and consume experiences rather than creating experiences for yourself and for other people.
Now, I want to ask the audience, any of you having problems with technology and how it affects your life here? Oh yeah, there's a young one here. Here, let me ask you. If you could stand up for me. What's your name?
I'm Trish Dewald.
Trish, thank you for volunteering. What kind of question do you have?
I have 2 young children, and I find that I'm often struggling with remaining present.
Yeah, you know, it's not just kids, it's us, because we, you know, people expect us to respond so much quicker now. You know, you get a text message, how come you haven't responded? You have an email, I sent it two minutes ago, how come you haven't responded to me? So, and you have, you know, and now, of course, you have this working from home, you know, where you think, well, I'm working from home, I can balance everything. How does she manage? What should she do?
Yeah, well, first off, there's been studies that have shown that mothers often have kids who complain that their mothers are not present with them because their moms are on technology of one kind or another. So it's a real issue. It's not just unique. And I think that's part one, is to realize, okay, it's a broad social phenomenon. Second thing, honestly, I think we have to be strong enough to put it down, to turn it off, to unplug, to say no, essentially, at 1 minute at a time to whatever that thing is. And we start breaking the habit as a result. And then it's important to replace whatever we let go of. If you pull that weed, as it were, out of the garden of your mind, you got to put a flower back in its place. Otherwise, weeds return, as any gardener knows. So replacing a poor habit, like a technology habit, with something more positive, like playing games with kids. It's so rewarding. I mean, kids are so cute, right? And it's so much fun to do stuff with them as well. And then it's a lot easier to just lay down that cell phone, disengage from that iPad or whatever.
What I do is, you know, I practice. When I practice medicine, I'm home. I come home pretty late, and there's a whole slew of things to do. I have a 2-year-old, an 8-month-old, and 11-year-old. So I know that those moments that I have now will never come back again. So I just flip the phone over, and you have to do it. And it kills you because you know that you have to pay for it at some point. But I'd rather not pay for it with my children. I'd rather pay for it, you know, later on and express that disappointment. And life is all about choices. And I think if you choose your kids first, you'll never go wrong. It really is how that is.
A lot of parents today will give their kids anything except their time.
Well said.
Oh, thanks.
We'll take a break. When we come back, my personal favorite part of the show, audience questions. Please stay with us.
How can you use some of the things that were talked about here today to improve your relationships?
If you're trying to repair a relationship and your other partner stops being such a jerk and they actually start doing whatever it is you want them to do, notice it.
Welcome back. We've been talking about happiness, and now we have the favorite part for me for the show, which we have studio audience questions. But first, the producers told me we have a person that's naturally happy. Bradley, let me talk to you for a second and tell us what that means. Well, thank her for me, please. Just, she's participating with us. Yeah, please do. Tell us who you are.
Hi, I'm Bradley, everybody.
And so, can you tell us she's naturally happy?
I mean, yeah.
So have you always been like this your whole life?
I feel like when I was a child, a very young child, I definitely was just naturally happy. You know, I just paid attention to little things, the way the wind would blow through the trees, or like flowers. You just, you know, pay attention to little stuff.
Were you taught that? Are your parents like that too, or are you the only one in your family like that?
I don't know. I feel like I kind of stand out on that one.
Oh, do you?
A little bit.
So there's some genetics. What do you think, Dr. Hanson? There's some genetics involved in happiness here?
Yeah, it's about 1/3, 2/3 on average. So you probably had a naturally cheerful disposition, but then you did the work. You looked for the good facts, you let yourself have a good experience, and then you took it in over time.
Absolutely.
Any other questions that we have? Yes, sir. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good.
Yes. How can you?
What's your name, by the way?
Oh, Larry.
Larry, yes.
Yes. How can you use some of the things that were talked about here today to improve your relationships?
That's a great question. Relationships, and we had, you know, I think Melody, when she was with you for the last 3 weeks, she had some relationship issues with her husband, and I think that was helping. So maybe tell the rest of the audience.
Yeah, 2 things. The first is that it's interesting when we come together in relationships, we tend to see the good in the other person, and yet over time we sort of take them for granted. And then if you imagine what's that like to be on the other side of it, to feel taken for granted by somebody that you're living with or working with or sleeping with, or in my case, all 3, right? Doesn't feel so good. And so for me, one of the opportunities is to continually kind of see the good in the other person that's real. I've been married 31 years, and it's easy to get used to this other person. So I will deliberately look for things to like about my wife. And trust me, she's a very likable person. For the record, she's likable. But I'm doing those little things to reawaken that inside myself. So that's number 1, to keep looking for the good in the other person for your own sake. But also it's a good odd strategy, because as that other person experiences and sees that you're seeing what's good about them, not making up stories, not looking at the world through rose-colored glasses, looking at the world through clear glasses, seeing the good things that are there as well. That'll help that other person trust you more. And then the other thing is, if you're trying to repair a relationship and your other partner stops being such a jerk and they actually start doing whatever it is you want them to do, notice it. Let it in. Let yourself register it. Otherwise, why should they stay motivated to keep making efforts over time? flip it around again. If we're trying to respond to the wants of another person and they don't recognize it, after a while we kind of lose motivation. We lose momentum to do that. So for me, both of those things have been really useful in my long marriage and also in my work as a couples counselor.
That's a great question. We'll have to take a break. When we come back, Partha's prescription. Stay with us. Back with you. Today we've talked about happiness. What can we take away from today's Partha's prescriptions? Live with purpose. When you wake up every day with a sense of purpose, you'll feel more fulfilled and happy. Also, start taking in the good. This is a simple practice of noticing pleasant moments throughout the day and making a conscious effort to feel them in your body. This will shift your perception of how happy you are. Also, put down your cell phones and your tablets when you're talking to other people, when you're having human face-to-face connection. This will be crucial to our well-being. And remember, happiness shouldn't be put off or thought of as something you'll achieve down the road. Make the effort to be happy today and choose happiness. True and lasting happiness isn't reliant on your external conditions. Now, to stay informed on today's topic, learn about healthy living and how to become your own health hero, visit us at AskDrNandi.com. Also, we'd love to hear from you. Be sure to follow Ask Dr. Nandi on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest, and join our discussion. Lastly, there's a beautiful word in the Hindi language that literally means the light in me honors the light in you, and that word is namaste. So namaste to each and every one of you. Thank you for watching. See you next time.